Hello everybody, or anybody who watches. I'm not assuming anyone watches, but I thank you if anybody watches these videos. I thought I'd carry on doing a little more reading from the Rachel Aviv article from the New Yorker. But just before that, I just obviously following the current trial, the retrial of the Baby K attempted murder case. And as said before, there's some amazing, many amazing accounts reporting about this trial and analysing the medical information and misinformation that's come out during the trial. But one of the big things that has been communicated today is that not only in the case of Baby K is the computer data regarding when nurses come in and out of the unit wrong for this particular case of Baby K attempted murder retrial, it's also wrong for every other case, every other charge, shall I say, that reached a conviction in which that data was used, because the police have just accidentally, and in quotes, or conveniently made it kind of fit that I don't know what they did, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's deliberate. It wouldn't surprise me if it's deliberate. And also, not only that they're actually in their bundles of evidence, that they've given to the CPS. They're mixing up days of notes, medical notes from previous days, and trying to make them relevant to other days. So that's just what this should do, is just trigger an automatic appeal, of course. That's what that should do, shouldn't it? Now, before the second chance at the appeal went through, I was wondering whether they were going to leave the appeal till after this retrial, but now I see why they did it before. Because had they done the appeal hearing after this trial, which I think is going to go Lucy's way, I believe it should do, I hope to God it does, and all that information's out there and being reported on after the trial, if they hadn't have done the appeal hearing before, and all this information's out there saying that the police have given the wrong information about when people are coming in and out of the unit, which is crucial to the prosecution case in many instances, then it would have been a lot harder for the three judges who refused Lucy Letby's defence team refused her application for leave to appeal for the second and final time, effectively. It was just done before one judge initially, wasn't it? And then they had the three judges. So, but it's still coming out nonetheless, and the reporting restrictions will be lifted soon. I really think this could be what I'm calling the tip of the spear, as it were, this case. And it's an act of hubris, utter hubris, by these evildoers, everyone concerned, from the consultants to Evans, the prosecution, the police, obviously, the corrupt police, CPS, the whole system, the evildoers, the NHS, unfortunately, as well. It's an act of hubris that they wanted to, by trying to maliciously bring this case in a way, and not accepting that a verdict was not reached before last year. They were seeking to put another nail in the coffin, as they see it. But what they've done is just, I don't want to mix the metaphors, but they've just opened it up to everything that they're doing to much greater scrutiny, and sunlight, as they say, is the best disinfectant, and there's some sunlight coming in on their workings now, which I think will act as this tip of the spear concept to, especially once reporting is free about it. And the analysis of Evans's alleged methods for deciding which babies' deaths are explainable and which are not, his genius for doing that is going to be interrogated at a level that was never interrogated, certainly in the media before, but wasn't interrogated in the trial last year. And it's going to fall apart, as it would fall apart. As Dr. McConville's doing, it would be ripped to pieces. Absolutely ripped to pieces, his rationales for... Well, it kind of begs the question that what wasn't explicit in the first trial is that we don't see his explicit rationale for deciding which babies' deaths and crashes were explainable and expected. We don't see them. They're in shadow, as I've said lots of times. But they need to be brought out of shadow to justify and to explain why he makes those choices. I think we know why he makes those choices, because he was guided to make those choices, because he had the information given to him about which deaths. And this is, again, possibly 7 from possibly 19 or more. 19 or more, because we don't know how many were wrongly coded as stillbirths. They say 17, but there's no death showing for August and October 2015, and there should be. But there are stillbirths showing, so there's 19 at least. So Evans's apparent genius for, based on a lot of shabby notes, deciding which is unexpected, which is not unexpected, which is suspicious, which is not, that's going to all be interrogated at a much deeper level, as Dr. Michael McConville in particular is doing, and Dr. McLachlan has also done, and other people as well, of course. Anyway, back to the article. Jayaram and Breary, what a pair, felt that they were being silenced by a hospital trying to protect its reputation. When I spoke with Breary, that's Rachel Aviv saying that, he had recently watched a documentary about the explosion of the Challenger space shuttle, and he described the plight of an engineer who had tried to warn his superiors. God, the nerve of this creep. Sorry, I've got to stop interrupting the article. He's watching this documentary. He described the plight of the engineer. Yeah, another hero, you see, but a hero, he wants to be a hero, Breary, and Jayaram's a hero, who had tried to warn his superiors that the shuttle had potentially dangerous flaws. Breary saw his own experiences in a similar light. Oh, did he? Did he? So much so that they didn't go to the child death overview panel, or ask for the coroner to get involved, to have a full inquest for the deaths, or go to the police directly. So yeah, he tried really hard, didn't he? His efforts would have begun and ended completely, as would Jayaram's, if Lucy Letby wasn't simply just kept out in the island of lost souls, or would have left the trust, or retired from nursing altogether, or just had a breakdown, as they were pushing her to do that. And that's when his efforts would have stopped completely. That's when Jayaram's efforts would have stopped completely. You see, they only started it up again. They only started it all up again because Lucy Letby was coming back, and they'd had to been forced to make an apology, and they'd been threatened with the GMC by Tony Chambers. He said, "We're going to draw a line under this," Tony Chambers said. "Draw a line under it, and any more of this bullying, which you've been found guilty of, any more of this bullying and targeting and scapegoating and persecution of this nurse who's done nothing wrong, and we're going to be contacting the GMC about you and your fitness to practice and your fitness to work with other people." Can you just tell how much revenge they would have wanted for that? And here's Breary, your man, comparing himself to some hero figure in some other story. Well, like a narcissist would. Like a narcissist would. He and Jayaram had spent months writing emails to the hospital's management trying to justify why they wanted Letby out of the unit. But giving no evidence though. Giving no evidence. Not only no evidence of deliberate wrongdoing, but no evidence, zero evidence of incompetence or making any mistakes. Nothing. What was the management to do? They just wouldn't give any. Why didn't they give any evidence? Because there wasn't any, and there never has been any. The whole awful, disgusting situation has been brought without any evidence at all. It relied on a sociopath called Dewey Evans and the corrupt police, the disgustingly corrupt police, to make this work. Otherwise it would have started and ended at that hospital. With Lucy coming back and then them probably trying to sideline her again, and maybe she would have got overwhelmed by it and left, and it would have ended there, and there would have been some medical negligence cases brought against the hospital, the trust, and some of the individual doctors. Not against Lucy Letby, because there's never been any evidence that she's ever done anything wrong, either deliberately or in error, or by some form of negligence. Anyway, they wanted her off the unit. They wrote with the confidence of people who felt that they are on the right side of history. That's an interesting line that Rachel Aviv writes. I'll read that again. They wrote with the confidence of people who feel, or who felt then, I suppose is the accurate thing, that they are on the right side of history. I don't really understand that line. It's just saying that they just believed that they were right, but based on what? No evidence. Maybe I'm sort of getting a bit of subtext here from Rachel Aviv, is that they had this confidence that they're on the right side of history, but it is their hubris, it is their arrogance, because it's just based on the feeling. The confidence is empty, the confidence is spurious, it's not based on anything. What is it not based on? It's not based on any evidence. So their confidence is actually covering the real reason to want what they want, which is Lucy simply not to be there. And not to have the narcissistic wounding, as I think the term is, in that kind of phraseology of talking about narcissism, the narcissistic wounding that they have experienced by being made to apologise, and have experienced by being made to accept that Lucy's coming back as a valued member of the team, and many other people wanted her back and were looking forward to her coming back because it was the just and right thing, and she's a brilliant nurse. And these narcissistic consultants were wounded to the core, or to the empty hole that is their core, the emptiness in themselves. So maybe that's what Rachel Aviv is kind of quite subtly floating in there, the idea that the confidence was misplaced, empty, and covering something else entirely. That's my interpretation anyway. Next paragraph. Serial killer health professionals are extraordinarily rare, but they are also a kind of media phenomenon. A small universe of movies and shows has dramatised the scenario. In northwest England, this genre of crime has not been strictly limited to entertainment. Harold Shipman, one of the most prolific serial killers in the world, worked 40 miles from Chester as a physician for the NHS. Yeah, he was a GP. He is thought to have murdered about 250 patients in the span of 3 decades, injecting many of them with a lethal dose of a painkiller before he was convicted in 2000. The chair of a government inquiry into Shipman's crimes said that investigators should now be trained to, quote, think dirty, close quote, about causes of death. Well, it strikes me that the phrase think dirty is that they should have been thinking about how dirty the unit was in terms of the pathogens. then I think the phrase is, or the technical language, isn't it? The nosocomial infections that were happening to the babies because of the sewage, the breach in this hospital wastewater through the pipes and backing up through the sinks and toilets and going over the floor and getting in all to the tiniest crevices and creating what Dr. Michael McConville was saying is a biofilm, and I think Dr. McLachlan calls it that as well, this biofilm which is not even visible to the human eye, is just everywhere you can imagine, and the deepest clean probably wouldn't get it sorted out, wouldn't get it removed from that hospital. And it was a perennial thing, kept on happening, these leakages, and it was happening chronically. It was going on above, in this crawl space, and so this stuff is getting out there at a microscopic level. And not only did they not have any kind of formal deep clean while they closed the unit, because they never closed the unit during this period. Had they done so, we would have heard about it. And it's obvious that they didn't. They just were hoping that nobody would notice or nobody would make the connections, but people have made the connections. Think dirty. So yeah, what the police, the police aren't up to it. They're not up to thinking. They just want to find someone to put in the frame. It doesn't matter whether it's right, wrong, right, left, indifferent. It doesn't matter. It's just as long as they could get a case and get somebody in the frame, they don't care, because you're dealing with, not all officers, but very often you're dealing with very stupid, venal and corrupt minds, unfortunately. Not all, but often. But in this case, we certainly are. In April 2017, with the permission of the Countess's leadership, Jayaram and another paediatrician met with a detective from the Cheshire Police and shared their concerns. My understanding prior to this, and due to other reports I read last year, was that, that was taken at a higher management level, that the managers, a manager, possibly Tony Chambers, possibly one of his deputies, actually contacted the police in April. But anyway, they're just saying that they have this meeting with a detective. I wonder which one that was. From the Cheshire Police, maybe it was Old Hughes, yeah. I wish it was a mad bug in the water, Hughes. Met with the detective from the Cheshire Police and shared their concerns. Quote, within 10 minutes of us telling the story, interesting word, the superintendent said, this is Jayaram speaking, within 10 minutes of us telling the story, and that's what it is, the story, the superintendent said, well, we have to investigate this, Jayaram said. And then another little quote, it's a no-brainer. So I'm assuming that that's what the superintendent said. It's a no-brainer. Well, that kind of stupid language, it's a no-brainer, is it kind of reflects back on who's saying it, I think. It's the fact that he's a no-brainer. It's the superintendent. I think it may well be Hughes. Because they don't name him here in this particular paragraph. But he's the no-brainer. He's the no-brainer. And that whole Hummingbird is a brain-absent system and project. There's no brain involved there. It's just sort of weird automatons pretending as though they're professionals, and with no curiosity, no critical thinking skills whatsoever. But much worse than that, a deliberate attempt to avoid anything which might point them in other directions, to avoid all that deliberately, because they're hungry for glory and hungry to get the person that they want. It's a no-brainer. Yeah, you are a no-brainer, Hughes. You are a no-brainer. In May, that's May 2017, the police launched what they called Operation Hummingbird. Yeah, they did. Estimates have been up to like 10 to 15 million pounds that cost. Mostly in kebabs and other takeaways probably, and ridiculous claims for overtime, in which they were doing what? What were they doing? As they acknowledged themselves, they had no idea about any of the medical stuff. So what were they doing? probably it's just all making it. The data, well, not data analyst, the crime analyst, the idiot crime analyst in the Operation Hummingbird is looking at things on that, when Lucy's had a long day and then misreading it as LO and thinking it's some kind of code. Stuff like that. Trash, rubbish, idiotic rubbish by idiotic no-brainer people. Interesting that you used that phrase. Yeah, it's them that are the no-brainers. Let's have it right. Let's have it right. They're the no-brainers. In May, this gets even worse. It's hard to read this. It's hard to read it. It's terrible. Not the article is brilliant, but I'm saying anything about Operation Hummingbird. The really good account that I mentioned last time, the trials of Lucy Letby, mentioned on Twitter, saying that they'd recently looked at the Hummingbird video again, and we're talking about the nurse specialist or nurse consultant that the Hummingbird operation used, apparently, as one of their go-to people, and that this account holder of the trials of Lucy Letby on Twitter said, I can't look at it again too soon, because it's revolting, it's sickening. You're seeing absolute dross there, in terms of there's no professionalism, there's no intelligence there. It's very, very stupid and dangerous people getting paid quite a lot of money to do stupid and dangerous things and to perpetuate lies, and who have no interest in justice, who have no interest in the truth, who have no interest in what happened to those babies whatsoever. It's all about them. And as I said in the video not that long ago, it's all about winning. It's all about winning for their ego. Again, the narcissism comes into play. In May, the police launched what they called it, the Operation Hummingbird. A detective later said, a defective, I should say, later said that Breary and Jayaram provided the, quote, golden thread of our investigation. What a lot of shit. What idiotic stupidity. What dumb, lying, filthy, lying, corrupt scumbags they are, these particular so-called officers and detectives. The golden thread. They're morons. They're morons. It was like Hughes in Operation Hummingbird, when he was sitting there and he's in that chair and he's kind of like, he's like that, and he's going like, well, Lucy Letby, she was very clinical. She did everything very clinically. She was clinical in what she did. She was very clinical. He grabbed that word because he thinks it makes him sound like he's on top of something and understands something. He knows nothing, absolutely nothing. But worse than that, it's got no curiosity about the truth. Nothing at all. Nothing. These people are dangerous. I think we've got to start again with the police. We've got to start again. They're rotted through. There will be good officers and there will be good investigations as far as they can do it within those corrupt systems. There will be good individual officers, I'm sure. But there's so much rot in there. There's so much rot, and the incentives are so wrong to reward low-lifes like Hughes. Low-life scumbag, lying, corrupt fuckers like Hughes. I wasn't going to swear, but anyway, I get so angry. Anyway, calm down. Get off my own ego trip and I'll calm down. So back to the thing. But the golden thread of our they didn't investigate anything. They just had this sociopath join up with them and the consultants, and they framed. It's a framing. It's not an investigation. It never was an investigation. It's framing someone. So language is important, and the meanings of words, the connotations and denotations of words. An investigation it was not. A framing, a fit up, a stitch up it was. God, I hope they get smashed. In terms of when this all comes out, they should be stripped, they should be sacked, obviously, and they should all face jail, all of them. But they won't. They'll keep their pensions, all these idiots. They'll keep their pensions, and they'll probably be promoted. They'll be promoted. That month, Dewey Evans, the first time we hear of this creep's name. Dewey Evans, a retired paediatrician, i.e. not a neonatologist, Someone who's been out of paediatrics even for like 15 years. From Wales, he's shamed Wales. No, it's not Wales' fault. Wales is a wonderful place. I used to live there, and my favourite people in the world, the people I most care about, are from Wales, and the people I most love. But he is a complete, it's nothing to do with where he's from. He could be from Timbuktu, he could be from Haringey, he could be from Cornwall. It doesn't matter where he's from, but he's an arsehole though. It doesn't matter where he's from. Who had been clinical director of the neonatal and children's department at his hospital. Was all big fancy titles. Well, we know what kind of people those are, aren't we? Someone like Gibbs, who leaves the machine off, who leaves the monitors off and walks out. Someone like that. Someone like, other doctors that leave, that can't intubate the babies. It doesn't say anything about his skill level. He was more interested, Evans, in becoming a politician, and that was his real ambition. In the same way that Jai Aram's real ambition is to be a TV celebrity. But he won't be one for much longer. He won't. He won't be. Anywho, so he's this big fancy, yeah. He saw a newspaper article. Well, this is what I was wondering about that. He saw a newspaper article. That's what I want to establish about the email that he sends to the NCA. I want to know the date and time of it. That's what I want to know. Just to rule out that he hadn't found out about the police investigation by other means, i.e. from the consultants or from the network or the Jungle Drums or whatever, the Bush Telegraph, or whatever you want to call it, rather than the article. So it's really important to get that time and date of that email he sends to the National Crime Agency. I can't get it at the moment. Maybe it's a simple case that the defence had the date and time of it, and it's fine in terms of that it was after the first reporting that there is a police investigation up in Chester. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We don't know. I don't know. Just, I'd want to cross that T, or maybe the defence have, but we don't know that they have. Anyway, so I'm going off a lot of tangents today a bit. I can't do much of this more in any big chunk anymore. It's just so sickening. Because I think we know what's happened. We know what's happened. We know what's happened. It's just undoing all the evil that's been done. It's like unwinding it from a spool is the effort of it. Unwinding the lies, the sort of like meters thick of lies and misdirection and just fake expertise and non-expertise, just corruption. Undoing all the corruption is the effort. Not what happened, because we know what's happened there. Someone's been framed for systemic failures, for medical failures. That's what's happened. It's a back of a fag packet stuff. It's a one-line thing. They've framed and persecuted an individual for systemic and medical failures, most failures by individual doctors, but by the trust as a whole, for not being able to operate at a level 2 unit while taking babies for a level 2 unit, and even taking babies that should have definitely gone to a level 3 unit, and pushing it through, and to the extent that they put their lives at risk and ended the lives of those babies because of their arrogance and lack of care, because they wouldn't acknowledge that they just weren't up to it. And we know they weren't up to it. How do we know they weren't up to it? If I just say, oh, they weren't up to it, well, you say, well, how do you know they weren't up to it? No, it was a serial killer that's made it all go wrong. No. We know they weren't up to it because in 2016, they were reduced to a level 1. We're now 8 years later. 8 years later. And they haven't been put up to a level 2 again, which demonstrates explicitly that they weren't up to it, and they never have been since, and they weren't up to it before. And that's why there was that spike in deaths, as well as the pathogens from the leaking hospital wastewater. Anyway, Anyway, he sees this newspaper article, apparently, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, describing in vague terms a criminal investigation into the spike in deaths at the Countess. Yeah, I mean, vague terms, it just means there wasn't much detail there, really. Yeah. So, quote, if the Chester police had no one in mind, I'd be interested to help, close quote. That's Evans speaking in his email. He wrote that in an email to the National Crime Agency, which helps connect law enforcement with scientific experts. I did a FOI request of the National Crime Agency last year, in fact, asking them for the date and time of that email, but they said they were outside of the FOI guidelines, so they didn't reply with any information. And he finishes off, Evans, in that email saying, it sounds like my kind of case. Sounds like my kind of case, yeah. Case for a criminal, actually, a case for a criminal framing sociopathic freakazoid. That summer, Evans, who was 67 and had worked as a paid court expert for more than 25 years, with some pretty bad black marks on his record, with his evidence being called worthless, among other things. He drove 3.5 hours to Cheshire to meet with the police. After reviewing records that the police gave him, this is a lot of concision here, they're sort of, in the article with Rachel Aviv, they're kind of pushing things together. There were sort of more discrete stages than this in terms of being sent the evidence over a period of time, and then going there, meeting, being sent the evidence, and then coming back to them. So he reviews the record that the police gave him. Just to go over that bit a little bit, I'm not making much headway here in terms of time or getting through. Based on what the police say in the Hummingbird video, the hospital send them physical copies, and they would be necessarily physical photocopies of all the medical notes of the 32 cases of 32 children, making up a combination of deaths and crashes. One must infer that because of the way they describe these notes and receiving them, and one of the detectives or defectives says, it was like somebody had got a bunch of papers and thrown them all up in the air. Well, you wouldn't say that if it was all sent to you electronically, would you? But then what they do is, so that's been, they were photocopies. They won't be the originals because the hospitals will need to keep, legally, it's enforced that they need to keep the originals. So it's been a massive admin task to get all those notes to the police, and then the police have a massive job. And why they do this, I'm not sure, but they put all that in, they scan all that in electronically because, and again, we've got to believe what he says because he's saying it. Well, we don't have to believe everything he says, but we can believe this, I think, because there's no reason why he would make this up. Evans makes it very clear in his post-trial interviews that he received all those notes electronically, because he says then they're all out of order electronic, couldn't make head or tail of them, all shabby and everything, the way they were presented electronically. It was like a basket case, and he could only make some semblance of sense out of them by printing them off again. So they've been photocopied at the hospital. You can see all the stages for things getting missed out and things being wrong, and Evans says himself they're all shabby, Photocopied at the hospital, then couriered over to the police. Police then have got to do the job of scanning it all in. And there could be likely to be mistakes made there by the police, accidentally or not accidentally. And then sent electronically to Evans, and then he's got to print them all out again, or most of them out. So he tells us in post-trial interviews, because he was doing the rounds, Sky, all of them, anyone who'd have him. After reviewing the records that the police gave him, he wrote a report proposing that child A's death was, quote, consistent with his receiving either a noxious substance such as potassium chloride, or more probably that he suffered his collapse as a result of an air embolus. Oh, so he had to drop the potassium chloride, didn't he? Because that wasn't going to fly for the others. They needed something to string them all together, and they went for the air embolus, you see, because they wouldn't be able to do it with the other gambit that he went for. He's been told, he's a hitman, he's been told by the consultants, find something, and the police, they're all working in cahoots, find something that we can link between all of them, i.e. an MO, the murderer's MO. Find the murderer's MO here. Wasn't going to be potassium chloride, well, go for the air embolus, and then you can dig up this old article or paper by Dr. Shuley, and you can completely misuse this paper on air embolus, and completely misconstrue it and misuse it and misdiagnose actually air embolus. That's not me saying that. That's the author of that paper, Dr. Shuley, who said that at Lucy Letby's second appeal hearing, that they said that Evans's approach to using his paper was completely wrong, and that air embolus should not be diagnosed purely by virtue of saying that it wasn't these other things, therefore it must be air embolus. And as Dr. McConville was saying in lots of his tweets lately, and he itemises it very clearly, all the other potentials for causing air embolus as well, whether it's certain disease processes such as necrotizing enterocolitis, or it's mechanical intervention either through the UVC lines that are being put in, or I'm just forgetting the terms, I'll just have to look them up. Yeah, I'm back. Sometimes my mind goes a bit. And yes, CPR is another potential for causing air embolus, or emboli if it's plural, I suppose. And the lines going in, the UVC lines, the umbilical venous catheters, and also intubation as well. And we know we've got the evidence of that was shown in court, that there was these repeated attempts to intubate babies because they didn't have the skills, didn't have the doctors with the skills to do it properly, so they kept on doing it again and again and again and again. And as Dr. McConville says, there are other disease processes as well that can result in air embolus as well. So there's a whole, he listed about 8 or 9 of them in a recent tweet. That's why I recommended, if you're on Twitter, following at Reason Over Fear, which is Dr. Michael McConville's Twitter handle. Excuse me. Was that some water? Dr. McConville's Twitter handle, because he's going through it all in such detail. It's absolutely amazing, and you need someone like Dr. McConville, or ideally him, on the defence's side when the retrial comes about for all the other charges. I hope to God that he will be there, and I hope and it'd be fantastic for Dr. McConville to be there, for Richard Gill to be there in terms of the statistics, for Dr. McLachlan to be there as well in terms of the medical aspects. So that would be like a dream team of people that a properly thought out defence would use. I'm just going back to my notes now, or the article rather. I'll give it a rest in a minute. So yeah, potassium chloride. So they dropped that quick smart, didn't they? They didn't hold on to the potassium chloride for too long because it wasn't going to work across a series of cases, which is what they wanted, what the police wanted, and what the consultants wanted. They didn't want to do this by half measures, so they had to have some overarching, bogus overarching methodology of saying this is the reason why these ones are unexpected, and this is what links them all together, the air embolus. But as I say, the backing of this medical paper by Dr. Shuley was completely misused and abused, as Dr. Shuley said himself, gave testimony in Lucy Letby's appeal hearing, and was very concerned at Evans's approach, as it were. In other words, he'd corrupted the process, as you'd expect from someone who's corrupt, as you'd expect from someone in terms of Evans, in which another judge did call his evidence worthless, as you'd expect from a sociopath. Later, when it came clear that there was no basis for suspecting a noxious chemical, Evans concluded, that the cause of death was air embolism. And that's exactly what Shuley was saying. You don't rule out things, and that means it has to be air embolism. They've misused that paper. And also, even if you did come to that conclusion of air embolism, there's a whole, because of all the medical status of all those babies and all the things going on with the mums, and their prematurity and other disease processes that were there, and all the interventions from the doctors. There's a whole host of other potentials why air embolus could have been caused. But what we're not seeing here, also crucially, are the other, at least 12 other deaths. I've always maintained that if we had that made explicit, if the defence had insisted on, and I don't know whether they tried to and were denied, but if they insisted on seeing and looking into all the deaths themselves, and then could find comparators in deaths that Evans said were not suspicious, expected and explainable, and said, well, you've got the same situation here as you have in one that you've said is unexplainable and unexpected. So how have you, what's your scientific rationale for making the difference between these two subsets of all the deaths? How have you done it? And that crucially is what needs to be interrogated. How has he done it? It's always been in shadow, because those 12 other deaths never get anywhere near. And all the other crashes as well. And also it begs the question, what determines a crash, and how many other so-called crashes were not investigated because it wasn't convenient for them to investigate it, because it would destroy their planned intention, or their planned goal, which was to create that completely artificial set of X's by Lucy Letby's name, by cherry picking the ones that they wanted to get her for, while conveniently eschewing and pushing away all the ones that they could not get her for. Oh, it's just sickening. It's just absolutely sickening. Evans concluded bullshit. He didn't conclude anything. He was told what to do. He was told what to do, and he came up with it. He's a hitman. He had to be one. He had to be one. He had to have prior knowledge. He had to know who they wanted him to pick. He had to know which deaths he wanted them to pick, and crucially, which ones he did not. He should not and must not pick. Because if he starts picking a death and saying, oh my God, here's another death that's looks like it's intended harm, Lucy Letby's not on duty, we've got 2 serial killers now. They don't want that. The police don't want that. The police don't want 2 serial killers. They're happy enough with 1. The consultants don't want 2 serial killers. They're happy enough with 1. So Evans mustn't make any of those sorts of gaffes. And how do you guarantee that? By making sure that he doesn't make any gaffes like that. By telling him which ones. By telling him which ones he has to pick. I'm going to leave it in a minute. I'll just finish this line. Quote, this is Evans. These are cases where your diagnosis is made by ruling out other factors, he said. And that's precisely in terms of air embolus. In terms of air embolus, what Shu Lee says he shouldn't do in order to diagnose air embolus. But more than that, how was he explicitly, and where was he tested on this, on the stand? How was he tested in any way whatsoever by the defence, improving his rationale for ruling out all the other potential factors that could cause air embolus, the ones I went through before, the UVC, the CPR, the necrotizing enterocolitis, other disease processes, other aspects of sepsis, the intubation. How have we seen him do it? Did he demonstrate how he ruled out those factors? No, we didn't. And we not only didn't see him demonstrate how he ruled out those factors in the case of the 7 murder charges, we also didn't see how he, well, like everything, I'm repeating myself now, we also didn't see in any way whatsoever, and nobody's seen it, because nobody there in that prosecution or the police or anyone, certainly not the hospital, certainly not the NHS, nobody cares about his very blithe and easy explanation for all the other deaths, that they're all expected. They're all expected and explainable. even though they, in isolation, outside of all the deaths that Lucy was charged with murder for, all these other ones are explainable, apparently, and expected, apparently, constitute a massive spike from the year before anyway. So what's the cause then? Might it be anything to do with what Alison Timmis said, the consultant, in 2015, that she writes to Tony Chambers saying children are going to die, this place is in chaos, children are going to die, staff are going to go into breakdown mode because we're being unsupported, we can't work at this level, nobody's listening to us, she said. Might it be something to do with that? And the chronic problems with the plumbing and the hospital wastewater and the infections that came thereby in so many of those babies. There's a massive scandal that's waited beyond the hideous, horrific scandal of the miscarriage of justice, is what has happened there, that has been covered up by means of the fabricated serial killer story. That's going to explode once the miscarriage of justice is set right. That what really did happen there is going to explode, and then you'll see the knock-on effect, the domino effect, probably, and it should be, across the whole country in terms of neonatal care. And it's that dam bursting that they're trying to stop happening, is it not? Is it not? Because it's billions and billions and billions of pounds probably in terms of medical negligence cases. That's what I suspect. I'll leave it there. I didn't get very far again in the article. Maybe I'm yapping too much, but I just want to keep... The reason I'm going in this article in detail is just to kind of fold it in and merge it into everything else that has been put out there thus far. It alludes to so many things, and it's related to so many things. It touches on so many things that other people have put out over the intervening period since the verdicts. Thank you very much for listening, if you have, and have a great rest of the day there, or morning, evening, afternoon. Take care. All the best. Bye-bye.